Here's my kind of crazy, radical, socialist, democratic way of addressing housing in the city of Chicago that would instantly bring down the cost of renting. So, my name's Jabari, Jabari, and I'm running for mayor because the city has constantly privatized and corporatized every single thing in the city, which is now driving up the cost of not only the city of Chicago, but the state of Illinois. A pretty quick and easy way to address the housing market in the city of Chicago is for the city to just actively participate in the housing market. And I do want to stress that we should not be against taxes. We should be against corporatism. Corporatism is the reason that everybody's taxes are so high because the city of Chicago is just acting as a middleman and not actively participating in our government, which defeats the point of a government. And that's why we went to America and made America, was to all pool our resources together. I think that was a collective kind of agreement when people went from hunter and gatherers to governments. It's so that we could pool resources together, like healthcare and transportation, because you can't build a train system by yourself and you can't pay for it by yourself either. That's the goal of the government and taxes. It's to fund services that everybody can use. It doesn't mean that you can't open up your own business. For example, I think that we should really stop selling our city assets. If the city doesn't have anything to own, how could it generate revenue? That's why our property taxes are so high, is because for the past 30 years, we have sold off all of our assets and things that we could generate revenue on, which is why the city of Chicago has to rely so fully on property taxes because we keep selling and corporatizing everything. If we stop doing that, then the city could generate its own revenue. For example, if we just kept our land, that reduces the amount of upfront costs that the developer needs to build new housing. So if we're going to keep building, what sense does it make for us to increase the cost by selling the asset? And here's why that kind of build housing strategy really isn't a great effective housing strategy on its own. Yeah, it does sound good in theory, is that, oh, increase the housing stock and the housing supply, but it still doesn't address the fundamental issues of the costs that go in towards building housing. A few of the things that are actually driving the cost of housing up are the purchasing of land, construction costs, building and material, and the regulatory process of how they have to sell credits to get city funding that could just otherwise still be saved in a different avenue. Like if we just did not sell the land, they wouldn't have to purchase it, and then they wouldn't need as much money up front to start a project. See how that kind of also makes sense? And so, why is my strategy better than everybody else that's running currently for the mayor? It's because I'm better than everybody else that's running for mayor. This strategy addresses housing on so many different issues, just from the developer stance to renters and people that are trying to get in housing. For example, if the city owns land, it can control the amount of actual affordable units that are being placed into the market. So a city-owned property would allow me essentially, or whoever is the Chicago Housing Authority, to give more targeted affordable units to different income levels. Obviously, I think the priority should be more low income, but that also includes people that are making over $75,000 a year. So if it's actually a partnership between the city and a private developer, then that means that I can negotiate like 100 units out of a 300 unit building for 75 maybe being more low income and then 15 being more targeted towards people that make over 75,000 to 150,000, meaning instead of you paying market rate rent right now, you would be able to just pay rent at like $2,000 instead of $4,000 if you make over $75,000 a year, and it's under 150. And if you make under 150, look, you're gonna have to you got to go to the market rate, or also I could just kind of provide short-term condos for people that make over 150. But you see how there's a lot more negotiation that I could have if there was more control of city assets versus just solely leaving it up to the private market. So, to recap on why social democracy and socially democratic approaches to fixing our government are a lot better than actually, I don't know, privatizing and corporatizing things that we've done for the past 30 years. Well, one, the obvious is that we retain our city assets and land. Two, it reduces the amount of costs that are needed to start building in the city of Chicago. Three, it addresses the time frame that it takes to get approval for tax savings that you can just get if you don't need a massive amount of upfront costs. Four, you just only have to pay a negotiated fee to the city for leasing out that land, which could be a lot more controlled and less risky than a, having a mortgage or a loan with a private bank that could potentially default or cause you even more money to build housing. And five, it allows us to actually control the amount of affordable units that we're putting in the market, because the current strategy of using TIFs not only just takes away taxpayer money and raises property taxes, but it also just does not address the affordability issue of housing, because a lot of developers are just opting out because it's so expensive to build housing. So oh, and six, it helps us generate revenue for the city. If we have lots that we're selling for $80 million, which are one-time sales, how about we just not sell it for a one-time purpose and then just rent it, because the rent is generating revenue, which means that that revenue can go into things like funding our pensions. It can go towards funding the school. It can go towards funding libraries or parks or infrastructure, or just making more asset investments that can fix our structural deficit. So again, we've already had 30 years to see that making one-time purchase sales does not help the city in the long run. So how about we stop doing that? It's not healthy for anybody, not even corporations, which is why they're all leaving the city of Chicago. That is a result of corporate Democrats, and it's not a result of progressive or socialism. The reason that all these businesses are leaving the city of Chicago, and the reason that the cost of rent is so high, is because we have not been taking a socially democratic approach to how we run the government. These are all results of the privatization of a public service and an entity, and we need to reject it and reject the corporate Democrats that keep trying to make it happen, because they're going to bankrupt the city and they're going to put us in all in jail to make us work for free, which is going to be slavery. So say no to slavery and vote for Jabbery.